I'm KP Watershed, and I am so excited for this discussion about HBO's new show, The White Lotus. And if you have not seen the show yet, don't worry. We are not going to reveal any spoilers in the beginning of this podcast. We will let you know. We'll give you plenty of warning before we discuss any spoilers. So I know a lot of people haven't seen the show yet. Part of why we're doing this is to get more people into the show and kind of just share why we have enjoyed it so much. And yeah, like I said, I've been excited for this all day, all week. I can't wait. So let's just get right into it with introducing this amazing panel. This is truly the pineapple suite of panels. And we've got Gabby, Gia, and JD. I will bring you in that order. And when you pop into this stream, how about just kick us off with something vacation related, since this is a show about vacations and a lot of other stuff, including vacation. So yeah, give us what was your favorite vacation ever, or your dream vacation, or just any vacation related anecdote or story, and we'll get started that way. So yeah, first of all, joining us, my fellow Connecticut native and my arch nemesis, Gabby.
Hey Gabby. Hi, I'm Gabby. So my favorite vacation I ever took, my mom and I went on this cruise to the Bahamas. But my favorite part was I did this karaoke contest with Britney Spears songs, and whoever won the contest got to impersonate Britney Spears at the end of the cruise. So I got to be Britney Spears, living out my childhood dream.
That is amazing. That was definitely a better vacation than anybody in this show is having or had, I think. And I'm kind of jealous. That is great. I love that. What did you sing? Do you remember the song, or was it multiple songs?
Hit Me Baby One More Time.
Of course. Love it.
And the little schoolgirl outfit too, with the wig with the pom-poms and everything.
Yes. All right. Let's see if I can get that karaoke. Maybe we'll work that into this podcast at some point. Thank you so much for joining, Gabby. Next up, we have podcaster, TV critic, Survivor expert, Gia. Welcome, Gia.
Hello. So happy to be joining all of you, and I can't wait to see who survives this White Lotus podcast and who survives the White Lotus show. Can't wait to be discussing one of my latest obsessions with everybody, and I really can't wait. I wish I had a fun travel story. I feel like I'm a bit of a traveling novice. I've done things around like New England, and I've done a couple times further out for different reasons. But really, I was hoping once I graduated, I was able to do a bunch of more vacations, be able to finally go travel more outside the country. And then, of course, I graduated in the middle of a pandemic. So on hold for now, but I am saving to eventually go live out my wildest dreams in various White Lotus-esque places.
I love it. Yes, I foresee a lot of amazing trips in your future. Hopefully better than
suite for all of us. Plunge pool and everything. I accept nothing less.
Of course. And joining us last but not least by fellow New Yorker, pyramid scheme champion, and our resident Gen Zer, JD. Welcome, JD.
What's up, Gia? I am holding you to that pineapple suite. Hello. So something sort of like vacation related is, I guess the one memory I have of like being on like a resort vacation was actually a funeral. So I think it might be a bit too on the nose that I'm here. I also lost my tooth, so that was fun. But I'm really excited to talk about who might be shipped off in a box in this next episode of White Lotus, one of my favorite shows of 2021, I feel like. So yeah, can't wait to get started.
Absolutely, same. But I need to know more about this losing a tooth on vacation. Were you like a kid, or was it a baby tooth or an adult tooth?
It was a baby tooth, yeah. So
okay,
I was like either 7 or 8 years old, and my grandma on my dad's side, who I had only met like once, had just passed away, and we were all flying out to like this little island called Dominica because that's where she was from, and that's where she wanted to be buried. And again, like I have like very little emotional connection to this, but me and my cousins were like play fighting one day, and I had just like hit my like tooth on like a bed frame wrong and just fell right out.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, it is a good segue into the reason why we are gathered here, to discuss another a show about a group of people who are having unexpected things happen to them while they are on an island. We're gathered here to discuss the White Lotus, and what we are going to do here is have a fantasy draft, because if you haven't seen the show, don't worry, this is not a spoiler. In the very first 2 minutes of the very first episode, we learn that somebody on the show, somebody at this hotel, the hotel is called the White Lotus in Hawaii, is going to die. And we are now heading into the finale this Sunday, episode 6, and we don't know yet who the death is going to be. So among lots of other things, this show is kind of like a whodunit, and it could go in a lot of different directions. So we're going to have a fantasy draft. We will try to predict among the four of us who will be the unlucky character who is not going to survive the finale. Whoever wins out of the four of us, I don't know, what should the winner get? Just bragging rights?
We can do a lot with bragging rights. I promise.
I
I'll never let it go.
All right, that's fine if any of the three of you win. I think if I win, I would like the three of you to pitch in and pay for me to have a vacation to Hawaii. I've never been, so if you can throw that together, that'd be nice.
Whoever wins doesn't have to pay for our pineapple sweets day.
All right, deal.
And just like that, the stakes have been raised.
So I guess I kind of mentioned the death, which is kind of like the framing device that kicks off the show. But there's really a lot going on, and it's such a compelling and dense show. And if I can kick it over to Gia, do you want to just you've watched most recently out of the four of us? Do you want to kind of just like describe the show for somebody who's never seen it?
Yes, so I just finished it this afternoon, or at least finished up to episode 5, which is the furthest it's been, and then we have the finale that's airing in a couple days on Sunday. But HBO describes The White Lotus as a limited series that follows the exploits of various guests and employees at an exclusive tropical resort over the span of the week. So these guests are all staying at the White Lotus, which is a resort in Hawaii. And want to do a little side note that I think they do a fairly good job as someone that doesn't know a ton about the history of Hawaii outside of some basic facts about it. But they do address the culture conflict, I'll say, of Native Hawaiians working at this tropical resort and having a resort for rich majority white people that is on stolen land of Native Hawaiians. So that is something that is addressed in the show. And I think that they, from my limited knowledge, do a fairly good job of it. But we see a lot of interwoven stories between the employees and the guests. Some people are there for romantic getaways. Some people are there for family vacations. Some people are there for their job and for other reasons. So there's a lot of different reasons why people are staying at this hotel. And we get to see how their stories intertwine over the week. And of course, having staff interacting with very privileged guests that are in the hotel is going to lead to some very interesting conflicts and clash of personalities. And it's been a delight to see it unfold, especially as someone that used to work in food service and in retail. This is something that I cringed, but I also felt so seen as watching the staff have to deal with these types of struggles working in an industry that you can be made or broken by how difficult the guests are. So great show, great on several levels, but that's about, without going into really too deep for the spoilers, that is essentially what you should expect from The White Lotus.
Thank you. Yeah, there is so much going on. Amazing cast. The relationships between the characters become very compelling. And Yeah, it's the show's a lot of things. We'll talk about the death and the whodunit element plenty when we get into the fantasy draft, but just getting into that dynamic between these super rich white entitled guests and the people who are running this resort there's so much there. And it's while this show is cringy a lot of the time and hilarious at moments, it also at moments is really, I think, poignant and just compelling in kind of the way it portrays these entitled guests who like kind of have an attitude of like, ugh, I came here for vacation. I came to have a good vacation, while they're like on this, amazing resort in Hawaii. And we as the audience get to see, kind of the ridiculousness and of that and their obliviousness, as well as what's happening behind the scenes of this resort. And there's a lot happening. Before we get into the draft, I guess anything else, JD or Gabby, that you really like about the White Lotus, spoiler free, that you want to mention or that you would like kind of mention to someone who hasn't seen the show yet that you're trying to convince to watch it?
The writing, because there are these little nuggets of one-liners throughout the series that if you catch it, and it makes you laugh behind the dark layer over it. And that's what I really like about the show. And the cast, they did an amazing job putting this cast together, because a lot of talented people that can deliver this kind of writing.
I agree. The cast is phenomenal. The writing I completely adore. And I'm just, in general, a big sucker for HBO poking fun at like rich white people. So when I saw that was like pretty much the entire premise of this show to an extent, I was like, yes, I am in. And they have not failed to deliver. So I've been really excited to be making my way through this show.
Absolutely. And speaking of the writing, I guess it bears mentioning, one more thing we can talk about that's not a spoiler, is that this show was written, I think directed as well, by Mike White, who we all know. I think everybody knows Mike White's work. We, the four of us, were kind of brought together in a reality game Survivor community. So I first knew Mike White as a Survivor player, and he created this show. I guess I'm excited to share with you the story of how Mike White came to create this show for HBO. But before I share that, any just general Mike White thoughts about his Survivor season or any of his other work, or any Mike White thoughts?
School of Rock is a great movie, and that's all I have to say.
Cultural icon. Love School of Rock like everyone. I was a huge David versus Goliath, considering some of the seasons that we had before and after, feels like such a breath of fresh air in the 30s. And seeing Mike play his heart out. I had forgotten that he was also a contestant with his dad on The Amazing Race as well. But seeing him play his heart out on a season that I just genuinely enjoyed and loved seeing the cast play together and see it unfold. It was great, and loved him in David versus Goliath. Loved David versus Goliath in general. Who could forget Mike White sipping wine while everyone else is scattering for trying to find an idol? I feel like that if you were going to ask me what Survivor contestant would write a show like this, I would say the contestant that is sipping wine while everyone is searching for idols. So I think there are some pretty good parallels. I'm like, this makes sense to me.
Yes, well, yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, like, Survivor was my first time sort of seeing Mike White in front of the camera, and just seeing that snark throughout this season, and just seeing like how I guess he was able to compartmentalize like the sort of mechanics of the game, the sort of emotions that go behind it. That was really interesting for me to watch, and that's something that I love seeing as someone who plays Survivor. And then sort of circling back to the White Lotus, the reason this show sort of popped up on my radar in the first place was Mike White's Survivor questionnaire that Dalton Ross did with a bunch of old survivors. Great read if you haven't done it already. But that snark is like still there. Like whether he's behind or in front of the camera, Mike White is just generally one of the funniest people I think I've ever like encountered.
Yeah, and such a great writer. All right, so I'll share the story of how he came to write this, and it happened very quickly. And it's something. He's a legend. So last year, we're recording this in 2021. We are still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and about a year ago, I think it was late spring of 2020. HBO was canceling production or postponing production for most of its shows because of COVID. Like they couldn't film because, like everything in the world, it was shut down and people were at home quarantining. And as we began to get more clarity on what was going to become possible in later 2020 with COVID protocols, HBO reached out to Mike White as a prolific TV writer and asked, do you have anything written that we could use that's COVID friendly? And I think what they meant by COVID friendly was like, it's set outdoors. There aren't any like big crowd scenes. It's scenes of like only 2 and 3 people at a time. And it's short. It's, not 20 episodes long. It's like a short series that isn't going to require months of filming. And in legendary Mike White fashion, his response to HBO was, no, I don't have anything written, but how about you send me to Hawaii for 6 weeks and I'll figure something out, basically. Or he said, basically, I have this idea for a hotel, a resort, and I think I can put something together that will fit what you're looking for. And they said, all right, let's do it. And amazing accomplishment. Maybe his greatest accomplishment, getting HBO to send him to Hawaii for however many weeks it was to create this thing, write the show, and then go and film it, while we were all locked up at home over, the course of 2020. And it came together very quickly. I think that's part of what makes the show feel so, like, I don't know, fresh, is that, like, he wrote it summer of last year and then they were filming in October. And so, like, unlike a lot of shows that go through years of development and years of rewrites, like, I think a lot of what we're seeing is like the first draft, second draft, and it feels like just, I don't know, kind of raw in moments in that way. And I think there's things, it's holes we could maybe poke in the plot, and when we do that as we get into the draft that, I think also are consequences of that creation process. But kudos to Mike White for getting a lengthy Hawaiian trip to make this show and write the show out of HBO at a time when most of the world was locked up at home.
Yeah, play smarter, not harder. Like Mike White has that to a T.
All right. Should we get into the draft? I'm excited for it.
Yes.
I'm ready.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to determine the draft order first. If you haven't seen the show, still no spoilers. We will give you warning before we start the draft. That will be where we kick off with the spoilers. So you don't have to leave yet, but we're gonna start soon. All right. Let me test my StreamYard knowledge here. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's do this. And, oh no. Oh, there we go. Let's do window. Let's do this one. All right. You can see this, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Everyone loves a wheel, right? We'll spin it once. It's got our 4 names on there. Whoever it comes up on will get the number 1 pick in the draft, which I think is pretty valuable because I do think there's one character who is the favorite to die. We'll see if you all agree about that. And also, if you get the number 1 pick, you'll choose who goes number 2. That person will choose who goes number 3, and then the remaining person will go number 4. And we'll do a snake draft. So whoever goes number 4 will also get pick number 5, and then we'll go back and forth. Basically, I have 16 picks. We got 15 characters and the field. So we'll each get 4 characters. We'll kind of talk through them and theories about why they might die or why we like them or don't like them as characters. And then we'll call it a podcast and start counting down until the finale, which will reveal who of the 4 of us was right. All right, so here we go. Who's going to have the number 1 pick? Let's spin the wheel.
So tense.
I don't know if I want it to land on me. You'll think it's rigged. Oh, no, not this.
Rigged.
Should we spin it again? I'll spin it again if you all want to. Not this.
No, you can go first.
You
No,
go.
I didn't want to pick the next person anyway. So
Exactly. I didn't want to pick it.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'll have the first pick. I guess because you said that, I will pick Gia to go second. And Gia, who do you want to go third?
Do Gabby and JD, do either of you want to be able to pick two at the same time, or?
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I don't care. Flip a coin.
Okay, I will go. Gabby
Okay.
will go after me.
Perfect. And then JD will have 4 and 5.
Sounds
All right. So I'm going to pull up the draft board and let me see if I can find it. That's this one, I think. Hopefully. Yeah. Here we go. Those are our options for drafting. And all right. So from this point forward, we are going to talk spoilers. Let me play some spoiler music. Oh, my volume's down. There we go. I can't play too much of this. It's copyrighted, so I can only play 5-10 seconds. This is the theme song of the White Lotus. All right, so if you have not seen the White Lotus yet and you don't want to be spoiled, this is the time to stop listening, pause this podcast, go catch up, watch the first 5 episodes, and then you can listen to this, and then we'll all enjoy the finale together. All right, I'm up first. Oh, let me fill in the draft order. Can I move this? Will it mess it up? No. Okay. So it was me. This tab is magic. It's going to fill in automatically if I did this right. There we go.
Yep.
Me, Gia. Yeah, magic, right? Gabby. This is like some pyramid scheme spreadsheet magic going on here.
You need to send me that coding.
I will. All right. So we got our board. I'm up first. Yeah. So, all right. As I said, I do think there is one heavy favorite to not survive the finale, and it's definitely one of my favorite characters and one of my favorite just reasons that I kept coming back to this show after discovering it. And it's the first person in this list. It's Armand, the manager of the hotel. I'm gonna have to take first. I feel like it's almost a boring pick because, well, you know, as we know, Armand is a recovering addict who had been sober coming into the show and kind of spirals out of control, relapses and falls off the wagon over the course of the first 2 episodes. And yeah, just reading through other theories that are out there on the internet. I mean, certainly he's spiraling at this point. So it would be easy to see a scenario where, he spirals, beyond control, and whether it's some sort of an overdose or something that he does, while he's on a bunch of pills, like he's definitely not heading. He's one of the characters who is not heading in a good direction. Some characters are kind of on the upswing as we head into episode 6, but it does not seem like Armand is. He's just been exposed in a compromising position in his place of work, and potentially will be losing his job. So yeah, he's just a lot's going wrong, and I hope he survives because, as we know, there's going to be a season 2, and he's such a compelling character and so much fun to watch, and such a well-played character that I kind of hope he survives. Plus, I kind of want to be surprised, and I feel like this wouldn't be the most surprising death, but I got to pick him number 1. I don't know. Do you all agree that he deserves to be the number 1 pick?
I think it's a little too obvious.
Too obvious.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, it kind of gets into that sort of mind game where, like, it's too obvious, so you're going to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
I could still see it for Armand. And just in general, one of my favorite things about this show has been Armand's rivalry with Shane, and just their constant, like, insistence of trying to get one up on the other. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, like, if KP, you're right in your theory, that sort of rivalry with Shane has anything to do with it. And sure, it has up to this point, but I'm not necessarily pushing it off the edge yet, at least. And I think something that could sort of hint towards the direction of Armand being the person who ends up dying at the end of the season is, like, I keep thinking back to the first episode, those first 2 minutes, Shane's face. Like, that's, like, I feel like that is a face that you would make, if the relationship between you and that person was, like, complicated. So maybe at the end of all this, Shane realizes he has, like, this massive amount of respect for Armand for, like, putting up with his shit and trying to, like, even one-up him at times. So yeah, I'm not mad at this pick overall.
Everything that JD said about why it makes sense that Shane would look this distraught over everything that's happened, and because he's had such a direct conflict with Armand, that makes sense that he would feel responsible for it if it does end up being Armand. I'm kind of in the same boat, whereas I'm not sure whether I should feel like it's so obvious that it would be him that they're not going to do it, but then also they might do it because that would make sense. But also because there's a season 2, and this is like meta thinking, if there were to be some returning characters, I feel like Armand is the first person that it makes sense to have return. So I'm not entirely sure, but Armand was not going to be my first pick, but I'm happy that he is the first pick because I feel like he is the central, if there is a central character in this, it is him. So he's the perfect person to introduce the draft with.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I kind of hope I'm wrong. That's kind of why I don't mind the pick also, because I would like to be surprised. And I do feel like this would be the least surprising death and kind of on the nose for all the reasons you just described. Yeah, I guess you will be getting your number 1 pick because Gia, you are up second.
Okay, I've been going back and forth a lot of this. I have several theories about who I don't think it is. I don't know if I should give it away because it does discount some of the other people as well. I don't know if this is a good place to do that or if I should do it at the end.
Up to you.
Yeah, I'd say up to you.
I'm not going to reveal mine.
It's not going to change how I feel.
So part of the reason I'm not sure if it's Armand is because the person who, we don't know anything about Armand's outside family. So we don't know if there is a reason for Armand's body, if it was Armand, to be in a plane, to be flown back to the continental United States, which is So I think that's the biggest thing against him, but also a lot of the staff that are working on there. Again, thinking Mike White brain of like, oh, well, maybe he specifically picked a staff member because like, if you're thinking that much into it, it doesn't make sense. So we're going to make that the thing that happens. My first pick for who I think is going to die would be Mark. I'm terrible at their last Mossbacher. Is that how they pronounce it?
I think that's right. Mossbacher, yeah.
Mossbacher. Mark is an intriguing character to me. He's gone through a lot. He has a very interesting story arc. He's gone through I would argue he's gone through like the biggest life crisis, except for maybe like Rachel and Tanya would also be up there, but for other reasons, I think Mark is on the biggest uphill trajectory. He ended episode 5 on a high, where in terms of how he's feeling about himself, but he's gone through a lot. He's one of the characters that has talked the most about death or like the greater conversation about his life. Him and his son are going to be doing a scuba diving lesson in the 6th episode, which I feel like could also be like, this could be where an incident occurs, whether it's with him or one of the other family members. But he's dealt with a lot internally in how he acts around other people. He has been dealing with a lot, and especially with learning about how his dad died, about the truth about that and everything, and how that kind of kicked something in him to be a more open and honest person. I feel like that there's a lot of build up with Mark, and it makes sense that he would be flown back, obviously, if it was him that died. And I think I feel like it would make sense for this to be the character that dies at this point, just with the trajectory that his character's going. I've been going back and forth about it, but I feel like that's the pick I'm more so confident with that I feel like could make sense in the next episode.
He definitely has not been focused on those scuba training lessons. That's for sure.
Yes. And yes, he's been skipping out on his scuba lessons. He's there with his whole family and with his daughter's friend, but he's been talking a lot about how he wants to have respect, or he wants to build a better relationship with his kids, particularly with his son. He's all over the place. He's very present during the show. I think it makes sense that this could be the person that dies. And I think because of his arc, that could be a way that they end it, since it's so hyper fixated on in life and death.
I like the pick. Yeah, I didn't have Mark in my top couple, but yeah, it's for all those reasons. It's a solid pick.
Mm-hmm.
Mark was also my first pick.
Mark was definitely up there for me.
I feel like I both have not had a lot of time to think about this, and also I've been thinking so deeply about this as I've been watching all the episodes, about who I think it is, and it's just there's something. He's going to end with a bang, whether that's him being the one that dies, or there's going to be some continuing event in episode 6 but he's been such a big focus that I just couldn't get this pick out of my head.
All right, well, Gabby, you're up for number 3. What are you thinking?
Okay, so same sentiments about Mark. I think it's going to be somebody in his family. That's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to go with Olivia because of the conflict between Olivia and Paula. There's going to be something there. I don't know what's going to cause it, but that's where my mind goes. I don't really have a huge backstory on it, but yeah, something's up with those two.
Yeah, we definitely haven't seen the end of the sort of Olivia-Paula relationship. They
need
call
their
themselves
climax.
Exactly. They call themselves really close friends, but you see how they interact both with each other and with other people when the other sort of acts as a third party. And it's like, are you really close friends? I feel like Olivia has learned a lot from Paula, but it's been a very take relationship on Olivia's end and a lot of give on Paula's. So I like the call that it sort of ends in this huge like blow up between the two, maybe resulting in Olivia's death. Also, there's also like I don't remember which episode it was, but it was a very early episode where Olivia and Paula just like continuously poke fun at Shane. And I feel like that's something that would get on Shay's nerves for a really long time. So if it does end up being Olivia who dies, I feel like that is another person similar to Armand who would just be like, okay, this is who would react in that way.
Yeah. And like you can see the dynamic between them. Olivia has this like underlying interest in Paula, but also kind of like showing off her life. Like, this is what it could be like for you all the time. But Paula is more like I want to stick to who I am kind of thing. And she sees the ugly sides of the Mossbacher family. And yeah, that's
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm also fascinated by the dynamic between Liv, and Paula. I had initially thought that Liv was in love with Paula and that there was going to be some sort of conflict between the two of them romantically. It seems to have not gone in that direction. It's in a way just even more complicated and messy as we learn more about their backstory and what's happened to them previously before this vacation. And yeah, I'm glad you two made those picks because I personally don't think it'll be a Mossbacher. I mean, you've given plenty of good reasons. This family, they're their own worst enemies, or they just they make a lot of bad choices, it seems like, or do things without thinking. But I kind of feel like, and I could be wrong, it would be a surprise. I'd be surprised if one of them dies because it seems like thematically the show keeps telling us that, like, for, you know, especially for this family and for really all of these rich, entitled guests, no matter what they do, no matter what shitty, selfish things they do, they always land on their feet, and it always works out for them. And we kind of saw that in episode 5 with the Mossbachers, where they were fighting with each other. They were all kind of like, you know, making bad choices, and then they just kind of like, again, fell upwards or fell into, you know, kind of that situation of the robbery, which in the end, like, kind of brought them together. And at the end of the episode, like, they're smiling and they're happy, and Mark and Nicole are, you know, are not fighting anymore. And I guess now that I say that, Liv was the one exception, where like Liv at the end of this episode is in bed with Paula, kind of being like, well, it seems a little fishy what went on here. So I guess that on the one hand, I could see a lot more happening with the Mossbachers, but I could also see the finale kind of putting the Mossbachers off to the side and focusing on other characters and having the end of their story, I guess at least the parents' story, being that, like, no matter what they do, they always land on their feet, because that's just like the sad reality that you can't escape even when you go to, you know, a resort in Hawaii. But I don't know.
Which is why I think they're going to end with a tragedy for them.
I think it would be an audience pleaser. Yeah.
It's not going to be directly to the parents, but it's going to hurt the parents.
Yeah. All right, I like the pick. JD up with number 4.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go a little left with this first one. I'm gonna go with Hutch.
I love this pick. I was
The reason I sort of am using Hutch as my first pick is because I feel like whoever dies has some like satellite relationship to one of, if not both, Shane and Rachel. I feel like if that weren't the case, it wouldn't be Shane we see in the first couple of seconds of the show, just sitting in the airport by himself, like trying to process, you know, the crazy week that they just had. And the reason I sort of settle on Hutch in particular is because I think something's going to happen between Hutch and Rachel. And I think, if I'm right, that it wouldn't be Rachel, sort of like process of elimination here. It wouldn't be Rachel who dies because, again, Shane would have like, I feel like Shane would be like in hysterics, like regardless of whether or not she cheats or whatever happens between her and Hutch, if something does happen. But I feel like on Hutch's end, it's also meta thinking it a little bit because of Mike White's relationship with Alec Merlino. They both play Survivor together. They've remained really good friends since. And I think it would be a good sort of nod to, you know, any Survivor fans out there if Mike White kills off the one Survivor alumni on the show.
1,000%. Yeah, that's I'm totally buying into that meta. That like I could just picture that phone call of Mike White calling up Alec and being like, "Want to die on my show?" Yeah,
yeah. I think that's exactly how that conversation went. And
This makes sense to me because Hutch is just there right now. We have no reason other than the other, of course, like the nod to Survivor fans are like, I can totally picture that conversation happening. Be like, you want to die? I'm going to kill you off on this show. But also, we don't know anything about Hutch. He's just there. The other staff members there at least had a plot point. We don't know anything about Hutch, where like if he has family on the island or if he has family back in the continental United States or what. We don't know anything about him. So could totally see that being how this goes down, and it's something that can shake up because they, despite the fact that he's there, he hasn't really been used for anything other than he was the one that Tanya gave the green bag to. But that was still, he was more like a connecting piece between the other characters. So I could definitely, it seems kind of out of left field, but the more you explained your pick, JD, I think this makes a lot of sense. And of the staff, this would make the most sense for who I would think it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think if it isn't Hutch, then it won't be any staff member. I think that's the sort of hill I'm going to die on here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're still on the hill because you're up again for number 5.
Oh God, I thought of Hutch and then I thought of no more. You know what? I think I'm going to press my luck and snag up that anyone else pick.
Another good pick. Really good pick.
What I was gonna do.
I could see a scenario in which the person who dies is either very minimally connected to the plot line at large or just completely disconnected, and it's just sort of the fact in and of itself of someone dying while you're on vacation that sort of rattles Shane as much as it does, as we see in the first. I know I keep saying like in the first 5 minutes of the show, but I feel like it's where we get pretty much all of the clues as to who that person could be. So yeah, I feel like I can see it happening where this mystery person is completely just like disconnected from everything else, and it's more a matter of, okay, something really fucked up happened while I was on vacation, or like this is like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Like Shane's kind of had a rough go at this vacation, just sort of like trying to negotiate his new relationship with Rachel, and the whole debacle with the pineapple suite. I feel like this, like just the news in and of itself of someone dying could be, what sort of like sends Shane like spiraling, so to speak.
Can I use this moment to talk about my big theory with this, which is why I was hoping I would get the anyone else pick after Mark. But since you didn't, since you got it, I will just use this time now to talk about how my brain is working. But we all know Shane's an asshole. I think if we all got to pick who we would have wanted to die, he is probably the top pick, if not like right up there. He has no growth. If anything, he's gotten worse since the beginning of the season. There's not even a hint that, other than the first 2 minutes of the season, that he's going to go through any type of growth whatsoever. So my opinion of this, like my like big what if, is that Shane is upset about something completely unrelated to the death. Like he's still hung up on the pineapple suite debacle, or like whether or not he has to pay full price. Like this death does not even concern him because it doesn't personally affect him in any way. And he's still one, or like maybe Rachel, the assumption is that Rachel leaves him, or if she's not the one to die, that she is not going with him on their other trips or anything like that. So he might be a little frazzled from like Rachel leaving him or anything else that's going on. But my big what if is like, what if Shane, this self-centered douche who is not done anything except make everyone else miserable throughout the entire series, is just completely has his head in the clouds, and this death does not even concern him. So that is why I think the anyone else pick also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I love the sort of idea that, we're seeing this dead body, or not, I guess we're not seeing the actual dead body, but we are learning that someone died at the same time that Shane is learning that someone died. I feel like that would be beautiful.
Yes.
I do like that. And it's definitely a good value pick because the other three of us will basically get 4 people. JD basically has 7 billion possibilities. I could definitely see it. I could see like the first 10 minutes of the finale just be an introduction to a new character who we haven't met yet. And like, I mean, I don't know that Mike White is really trying to surprise us or shock us with this story or with the death. I think he's really just more trying to impress us and like tell a compelling story. And I could see anyone else be a way to, as you said, just like create a death that makes this experience, again, that much more of a unpleasant vacation, I guess, for these other people who like ultimately don't really care about it. But yeah, I could definitely see it. I love the pick. So yeah, I like both those picks, JD.
Thanks.
All right, we're in round 2, and Gabby, you're up with your second pick.
I am torn between 2, so I am really, really thinking about this. Do I go with one that's obvious or one that's not? And tell you my theory why.
I've been going obvious,
better
but that's
juju?
the eternal question. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go with Greg. Good old Greg. His cough his cough. That's my only reason.
Yeah.
His cough.
Yeah.
I had it too.
This
Yeah.
man is not here for a fishing trip. I'm sorry. He's not. I don't know what he's there for. I think
He's
like,
hiding something for sure.
He's
There's something else
investigating
going on.
something. Yeah. He's investigating something, or he's not what he says he is. He is not working for Black Lives Matter or the Land Bureau management. He's neither. I don't know what it is, but like the fact that he's just there and his friends just happen to be leaving during the day after they arrived, like no.
Very suspicious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like the reason I don't want this to be true is because I just want the best for Tanya. Like as someone who is just in general a Jennifer Coolidge fan, but as someone who has grown to really love Tanya as a character, I just really want Tanya to get out of this show happy. So I really hope it's not Greg.
She deserves better than Greg.
True. But for the time being, Greg makes her happy.
Tanya deserves multiple boyfriends.
Right?
Yeah.
The cough is such a well done detail because I've rewatched it and I still am not sure if the cough is real or if it's just meant to be him like lying to Tanya, and like he coughs at very convenient times where she's like, "So am I going to see you later?" And then he starts coughing, like, "I'm not sure."
Yeah.
But it's like you really can't tell. Like it doesn't seem like he's faking it. But the cough doesn't bode well. And while I want the best for Tanya as well, and I want the best for Belinda as well, the reason why I could see this happening is, unfortunately, it seems like we are heading to Belinda not getting her own spa that Tanya has promised to her. And I could definitely see Greg's death sending Tanya like further off the deep end. And she's like, my love has died. Now I can't worry about starting a spa. I've got to attend to myself. And she leaves again, just kind of, doesn't follow through on her promise to Belinda and, just focuses on herself and, how she's feeling about, stuff in her own life. So I like the pick.
Yeah. And like considering too that Tanya, like at least for her sort of relativeness, is like still hung up on her own mother dying. Like having Greg die to her what would feel like just so shortly afterwards, I feel like that would just sideline Belinda completely.
Yeah.
All right, Gia, you're back out for your second pick.
All right. I'm torn as well. I was going to do anyone else, and then I was going to do Greg, and it's all over the place. I'm gonna go with probably what the most obvious choice would be in this. If you were just looking at this as a straightforward thing, I'm gonna go with Rachel.
That's what I was torn with.
Yeah. So I enjoy watching Rachel's arc in that she is, like a lot of people, kind of torn between not really knowing what she wants and trying to still make a difference in the world. I don't know how she ended up married to Shane. It's still like, I don't understand what she saw in him, but I understand her struggle as a woman trying to feel fulfilled and having a career and stuff while she's also just got married to a very wealthy family. So I really enjoy her. When Shane first talks to that couple in the airport, you're immediately made to think, before you start thinking about all the other possibilities, that it is Rachel that died, because they ask what happened to his wife and he doesn't answer. So the immediate reaction before you go into all the what ifs as you meet the other cast is that it's Rachel. And I'm also on that same train of thought with, do I go with the obvious choice or do I go with one that's a little more askew, I suppose? But I should get at least the obvious one out of the way soon. But yeah, I think it makes sense that it would be her, but it also doesn't, because it's just so clear that this could happen. And now the more that we see of them as a couple, the less I'm convinced that it's Rachel, because it's just so believable that she would just leave him. But yeah, but I'm gonna go with Rachel for this one.
And we were talking earlier about how Shane's reaction doesn't make you seem like it's Rachel, but Shane is just only into himself, that I feel like he probably would disconnect from the whole thing, because I don't think he
That's
ever
true.
really loved Rachel to begin with. You don't really know how they got together truly, but I feel like Rachel doesn't even know who Shane is, and she's just figuring this out as they're on their honeymoon.
Yeah, I can see it being. Oh, sorry. You go first.
Okay. I was just gonna say that I feel like Rachel, we see, kind of is aware of like her decreasing confidence the more time she spends with Shane. And I think that sort of comes from this idea of like she rushed into something too quickly and now she doesn't know what to do with it. And to sort of see also that she's kind of aware of what's happening as it's happening, I think that's been really interesting to watch. And having that all sort of maybe not climax, but have it lead to Rachel just like straight up walking out on Shane at the end of the 5th episode. I'm very intrigued to see what she does next, and I'm hoping that it's something good.
I'm interested to. Oh, continue.
No. I have a thought that I'm going to save for later. I'm sorry.
Okay. But just and also some of the way she's acting. She feels trapped right now. She tried reaching out to her mom, and her mom didn't have the time for her to kind of sort out her feelings. But she's also has some very concerning behaviors, in my opinion, Rachel, where she feels very detached. She feels less and less like she knows what she's doing. She doesn't seem like she doesn't feel like her life is going in any particular direction. So I'm not saying it's going to get that dark, but I feel like it could lead her to be a little careless in this last episode as well. So I feel like there are a lot of avenues they could go where it does make sense that while we're thinking of all these crazy theories about who else it could be, it does make sense in a way that it would be Rachel as well. That's my final thought on that part.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as I mentioned at the top, I had in my rankings, I ranked everybody in my secret rankings that you all haven't seen, like all 16 of these options, all 15 characters in the field. And I had 4 who I thought were high probability deaths. They were Armand was one of them. Rachel was one of them. I definitely think she's, one of the, just more predictable choices. And then 2 who you all haven't chosen. So I'm going to take those 2 now. And I love that we are very split up on this. It does reassure that like this could really go in a lot of directions. And we do have very different theories on what makes sense thematically, what makes sense based on the meta. I feel like my picks are trend in the obvious side to, I guess, kind of, respond to Gabby, what you were thinking. Do I go obvious or do I go, a little more obscure? But I will first pick Tanya, and similar reasons to Armand in that Tanya is spiraling. Unlike some characters who have kind of been on the upswing in episode 5 or in the past couple of episodes, things seem to be getting worse and worse for Tanya. I mean, she's got her fling with Greg, although that seems to be up and down as well, but she's drinking a lot. She's acting erratically. And I think this also solves the puzzle piece of how does the plot, come to a conclusion without Belinda getting the redemption and the promise that she has been promised and deserves. And it also potentially could give Tanya another opportunity to just act the hell out of this amazing, compelling character that Mike White created for her specifically. So I don't want to see it. I love the character, and I do feel like it's more obvious pick, but I'll go with Tanya.
I really hope it's not. I really, really hope it's not.
Me too. JJ, please.
No, I was just gonna say, I feel like, especially with sort of like the peak of her spiral in episode 5, Tanya sort of became like the Occam's razor to all of this, like the most simplest, like least stretch of imagination pick would be Tanya. And I think that Mike White has done such a good job of writing this character, and Jennifer Coolidge has done such a great job of acting this character, that like, even though it's kind of the simplest pick or one of the simpler picks, that it's still going to be very intriguing.
I like your feeling about it being like a connection to Belinda as well. If she dies, that like, I like this. I love the focus of Jennifer Coolidge, of course, but I do not hope it's Tanya at all.
One more Jennifer Coolidge question before we move to my second to last pick. If any character, if any actor in this show were to win an award for their performance, is it Jennifer Coolidge, or who would you give the award to for best performance?
Either Jennifer Coolidge or Steve Zahn.
Agreed.
I would say, let me see. Yeah, or Murray Bartlett. Those would be my top three. Okay, wait, no, because Belinda's also amazing.
Yeah.
She would be like, but she would be fourth. I'm sorry, like Jennifer Coolidge top, definitely. I feel like Steve and Murray are both doing such a good job, and I think Belinda's kind of the glue that's holding a lot of this together. But yeah, the unhinged characters are doing it for me right now.
For sure.
I agree with that completely.
All right, my third pick, going obvious again, the last one of who I had as a high probability death based on just things getting worse and worse and worse, is Kai. When we last see Kai, he is sprinting away on the beach, I guess running back home after stealing the bracelets. The robbery obviously did not go as planned. And one quick thought on the robbery. And again, I don't know that we want to spend too much time poking holes in the plot. As we mentioned earlier, this was a show that was put together very quickly. But I don't know why Paula couldn't just steal the bracelets and give them to Kai. Like, she had very easy access. She's staying in the room. That's what I thought
was going to happen.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess it just wasn't really well thought out on her part. And it does kind of, I guess, tie into the whole, like, we don't want to get our hands dirty. Like, oh, I'm above this, but I'll give this to you. Obviously did not...
Yeah, my thinking on that was just Paula couldn't think of a way to make sure that she was alone with enough time to first steal the bracelets and then find another time to give them to Kai without being found out at all. But yeah, like it definitely makes sense. Like, I feel Paula's also like really smart, or at least that's the impression I get of her. So I definitely think that she could have thought of something, but I guess this was just the path of least resistance for her in order to pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think it was mainly, I think they did the robbery in that episode that way because I think they were trying to get you to think that somebody was going to die in that episode or something. It was going to lead to something with that. So...
True. My heart was pounding. The stakes were very high. Given that we knew someone was going to die in the show, I was thinking the same thing. Oh, this is where it happens.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
the
why it was
shot
put in there.
of Mark tackling Kai is something that we see in many a trailer for this show. So that's also something that if you're sort of plugged into the show, that's something you're looking forward to happening. So just having that sort of line of events happening, I feel like that it makes sense that, people might have been leaning towards what if either Kai or one of the Moss backers ends up dying from this robbery. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kai's actually one of my last options for who I think is going to die. But the reason, I think I'm more on the of the opinion that someone that ended on a high this last episode is going to be the one that dies. So that's kind of where my head is at right now, and I don't have a reason that makes me think I'm more right than someone thinking that it would be someone that's spiraling right now. So I don't have a reason for this, but then also it just doesn't make sense for Kai's body to be, if it is him, for Guy's body to be flown back. That's my
Good
one.
point.
If they had mentioned like Kai's brothers live in that area now, or like it just doesn't. That's my one, like, this is a big issue that it like does not make sense unless it was something along the lines of like he died in what was assumed to be a mysterious way and they had to get it investigated or something. But I don't. Right now, this is one of my biggest, like, this is a huge. He is a native Hawaiian in this, working at this resort. His family all seems to be there. So this is the one that I'm fairly certain of, unless they have a really good explanation at the end, that it wouldn't be him.
Yeah, I kind of feel like everything surrounding Kai has been wrapped up to an extent that this show is able to wrap it up. Like, I feel like when we see Kai running off in episode 5, that is the last we see of him. Mm-hmm. And I'd be really questioning why we'd be seeing Kai again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right. And Gia, you are up now. So yeah, what are you thinking for your third pick?
I'm torn. I have a couple I'm pretty sure it's not, for several reasons, but I won't get into all that. I'm pretty sure it's not a staff member, unless it's Hutch. So that was such a good steal. Oh my god, I didn't even think of that.
I can't believe I got it.
I'm still wrapping my mind around this. But yes, that's such a good one. I guess for similar reasons, I'm going to go with Quinn this round. Similar to reasons for Mark, he's ended sort of on a high on the within like the last episode. He seems to be reaching out more. I think he's less likely than for it to be. It's less likely to be him than it is to be his dad, but he seems to be branching out more, finding his comfort. He seems to be forming a stronger bond with Mark. He's also one of the people signed up to do the scuba diving lessons. So I still, in the back of my head, is like, what if this is where the incident occurs, where the death happens? So it's a bit of a stretch, but he's had a really good growth arc compared to a lot of these characters. And I'm still of the belief that the person that died is someone that ended on a high in episode 5. So I don't think it's Nicole or Paula in that family. So if it is a Moss backer, I think it's one of the people that we already chose. So I'm going to go with Quinn for this one. That one makes the most sense to me of what's left.
Yeah, if we get a scuba diving scene with dramatic music, you're going to be parties. I'll celebrate that you're going to win this contest.
I don't actually want it to be Quinn. Like, I'm enjoying the direction that they're going, even though I'm not entirely sure how it's going to end or whether it's going to accumulate to something. But I've really enjoyed the scenes with him and just seeing him just be his awkward self amongst all these other people. But especially with how he's just kind of done with his family, but also seems to be making a little bit of an effort with them as they're all figuring out their things as well. So I don't think this is a super high probability that it's going to be him. And I really hope it's not. I've enjoyed his arc, but I don't think this is a terrible choice just based on all the reasons I'm thinking of.
Agreed. All right, Gabby, you're back up.
Much left. I'm gonna go with Kitty, Shane's mom.
Interesting.
I I don't know. She kind of rubs me the wrong way. And she said that she's staying at another better resort. Who's to say that she doesn't have a room down the hall? Just to throw it out there that she's doing all this stuff because all these name drops and all of that. So who's to say she's just not there drinking her mind out? And Shane may not even know that she died.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a possibility. I had Kitty at the bottom of my list just because I don't know if we'll see her in the finale. We kind of got a goodbye, but you're totally right. Her character would, turn on a dime and come back to, spoil this vacation that much more for her daughter-in-law. And it's not like she's leaving Hawaii. She is just going to another resort. So it still does add up that she could be on a plane back home at the same time as Shane. And it would give us a chance to see some more of Molly Shannon, who's been phenomenal and hilarious as one of the big bads in this show, kind of.
I love Molly Shannon.
I love the sort of like failure to see how what she's saying is problematic and just sort of like her beliefs in the role of women, and just seeing how like it's like borderline misogynistic of like her view of how women should behave, at least in public settings, and what their purpose are, and this sort of idea that like to say with such confidence that women are only like event planners and party hosters and this, that, and the third, like the like socialite lifestyle. Like that's something I guess is ideal for some, but to make that blanket statement of this is what the pinnacle of being a woman is, I feel like has given a little bit of depth to her character and also to Shane's character, because like we see how close the two are and we see how much Shane sort of gets from his mother, like character wise. So yeah, I've enjoyed Kitty in the sense that I think that the character is perfect. I think Molly Shannon has played this character perfectly. But similar to Kai, I feel like we've seen everything that we've needed to see from Kitty.
Yeah.
And just sort of the fact that like if she does come back, why? And I feel like one episode isn't enough to sort of answer that question completely.
She reminds me of, I get the same reaction with her that I got to like Dolores Umbridge in Harry Potter, in that it's like she's so frustrating. She's terrible. Like as Molly Shannon as an actress, perfection in this role, but it's like we all know a Kitty. And she's so irritating, more irritating than a lot of these people that just seem so like an unrealistic villain. And oh my God, she is so irritating. It makes so much sense why Shane turned out the way he did with the mom that he had. And the way that she describes her life as like, the most, everything that JD said, but also, they, like only the most privileged women will get the opportunity to plan parties and have this busy life in living the best of the best and everything, and going on all these lovely vacations and planning weddings and parties and charity events and all of this stuff. It's like so out of touch, but such a realistic, frustrating character. It's just all the props in the world to Molly Shannon because it's so realistically frustrating.
You won. Just be happy. Just be happy, as she's hugging Rachel and like cringing in my chair. Oh, I hate it.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
All right. Well, we got 4 characters left. JD, 2 of them belong to you. What are you thinking?
Okay. So I feel like I've been doing this for all of my picks, but just sort of like, instead of trying to pick one, I'm trying to eliminate everyone else. And I'm still of the belief that the person who dies has like some satellite relationship to Shane, because if they didn't, I feel like it would be another person in Shane's spot during those opening scenes of the show. And I think because of that, I'm going to go with Belinda. We see, I guess we could call it or I guess maybe not, but we see Belinda and Shane sort of uncover one of the bumps in Armand's sort of journey to sobriety, as he is, how do I keep this PG? As he is exploring an intimate relationship with Dylan. And I feel like that is an experience that bonds the two together, but we really don't see them interact too much otherwise. And I feel like Belinda is someone, if she were to die, if she were to be the person that dies, is just that enough of like a connection to Shane that, you know, it'll make sense for Shane to be the person we see react to this death, as far as like how it's structured within the plot goes. And yeah, I mean, that's really all I have on Belinda chances of dying as a character. She's by far one of my favorites. I respect the hustle. I respect that she's trying so hard. Like, she saw an opportunity to get herself, you know, further than when she currently is. And she is just kind of relentless at times in pursuing it, but also like she has that emotional side. And I love the relationship that she and Tanya have, and just seeing how they've kind of found each other at the perfect time. Like, Belinda was kind of feeling down on her luck at the start of the show. Tanya obviously still mourning through a very big loss, and what they've been able to do for each other on an emotional level, and I guess on Tanya's end, a material level. I really love that aspect of the show.
Yeah, I would love a happy ending for Belinda, and it would be a surprise, but I would certainly be love to see it. But yeah, I think I disagree with Gia on a lot here, in that I think it's more likely to be a staff member than a guest. And that was kind of driving kind of my rankings. And I mean, Belinda goes against, you know, Armand before he falls off the wagon in the first episode when he's training Lonnie, who we still have on the board. He has that great series of lines about just, you know, we're their mom, we're their caretaker, but we want to be generic. And like, these people are not our friends. Like, do not have relationships with them. And Belinda, you know, goes against that advice for good reason. I mean, again, I respect the hustle as well. And, you know, I do the same thing. But yeah, among all these characters, her story is one that seems the least resolved. So it does seem as we'll get a lot of Belinda in the finale. And I hope this pick is wrong, but I had Belinda higher than number 12 in my ranking, so I could see it being right.
Yeah, for the record, I also hope I'm wrong here.
Belinda's such a treat. Like, every scene she's in is a breath of fresh air. Whether it's her getting dedicated to her business proposal or just trying to keep things together when Armand is falling off the wagon. But I enjoy Belinda as a character. Natasha Rothwell is amazing in this role. For every kitty that is like frustratingly realistic, we have a Belinda who is more what's the word for this? Like
grounded.
Likably, yeah, like rounded and likably realistic, and that we all know a Belinda, someone that's just trying to help and be better. And I love her. I like that she has a little story arc and how she's trying to make a better life for herself and her family. So yeah, I hope you're wrong with the Belinda pick as well, but I am really enjoying her character, and I do hope we see a lot of her in the finale.
Belinda is the fresh air in this tornado of a mess of the rest of
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
we kind of see all these rich people problems like sort of get all tangled up, and then we get a Belinda scene, and it's like, okay, not everyone here is crazy. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate the sort of role she plays in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would go to her spa too.
It looks great.
If I had money, I would go to her.
True.
I would fund her dreams.
Well, she said part of her vision was to make it accessible, not just for the super rich, but open to everybody, because everybody deserves to, feel relaxed. And All right, JD, last pick, last round here. You're kicking us off for round 4.
Pick. And I'm between 2, but oh God, I don't know. Okay. I think I'm going to go with Paula. I was between Paula and Nicole because I do agree with the take that the Mossbackers as a whole kind of have a high probability of being sort of the victims of this tragedy. But I ended up going Paula over Nicole because I like sort of falling back on my idea of I really do think it's someone who has like interacted with Shane at least once. I could be wrong here, but I don't think we've seen Shane and Nicole interact, but we have seen Paula and Olivia interact with Shane and Rachel. And yeah, I think there is a road in which Paula does die. I think, especially with Olivia being so suspicious of the robbery, I think if this somehow falls back on Paula, then that could end up in, a situation where, maybe Olivia just gets a little too crazy, or Olivia, for every action there is like a reverse, or it's some physics thing about like pretty much things coming back to you. And for Olivia, that might mean, hiring a hit on Paula or something. But yeah, I'm not super confident in this pick. I'm pretty sure that Paula makes it out alive. As a character, Paula's my favorite character, I think, hands down. Just her, I love how smart she is, and I love how clearly I think she sees things. I think she knows exactly what she's gotten herself into with the Mossbackers, especially with her being able to pretty much read Olivia to a T, in the sense that Paula is 100% aware of the fact that Olivia sort of wants everything that Paula has, and not in like a envious way, but in a more like what's mine is yours type of sense. And the fact that Paula, knowing that, still acts independently of Olivia at times, I love that decision making. And yeah, I've just been I think we talked a little bit about one-liners. I think Paula's had some of the best one-liners of this show. And yeah, I could swoon over Brittany O'Grady for hours. So I love.
Yes, to all of that.
I have a theory on if Paula is the one that dies. So how
is this
they
what you were thinking before? This was the teaser
no.
before?
I have a Rachel theory too.
Ooh, okay.
But that's for after. So how they talk about her green bag with her medications in it? I think something's gonna happen where Paula has like an adverse reaction to something. And somebody who overheard them say her medications is going to pull out the wrong thing and try to give her something which is inevitably going to harm her rather than help her. And that's my theory on if Paula dies.
That's a really strong theory, because another sort of character trait, I guess we can call it, of Paula is, and I mean, we only really learned this through Olivia, but Paula is like allergic or is really sensitive to a bunch of different things. So I actually really like that theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense as to what could lead to Paula's death if it is her.
We've had a lot of setup with the allergies. Yeah, talk about one-liners. When Mark is like, is she allergic to fire when she leaves the dinner? I spit out my drink.
I don't want it to be Paula, but that theory makes a lot of sense. I love Paula and Olivia's banter with each other, even as we're seeing their friendship fall apart. And I really hope it's not either of them. I would like to see their friendship come to some natural conclusion that isn't one of them dying, whether that's them no longer being friends or having some chance of their friendship being rebuilt together. But I want their arcs to end with them both being alive. Just even if it's they both agree they're just not gonna be friends after this. But she's been through so much, and having her sit through some of those dinners with about her probably some of the cringiest parts of this show is for me is seeing her have to deal with these dinners with the Moss backers and her parents talking about white privilege and all these other things. And it's just, I've had those moments. I hate those moments. It was so painfully realistic to me. And I hope that it's not Paula, but the reasons that it could be Paula are definitely there.
Yeah, Paula's like the character. Now that you mention that, Paula to me is kind of like the character where, like, in elementary school, you're reading, like, you're in like history class and you're reading like a chapter on slavery, and then like everyone turns around to look at the black person in the class. Like, to me, I feel like that is a lived experience with Paula, and we are kind of seeing like hints of that, like with the Moss backers at these like family dinners and like breakfasts and meals in general and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Gabby, your last pick.
I would hate to see him die, but I'm gonna go with Dylan. Good old Dylan. We don't really know too much about him other than
he's got the day off.
He's got the day off. He worked really hard for that too, you know.
You said a lot of things, Armand.
I love Lucas Gage a lot. He's been little funny parts of this show, so I would hate to see him die, but I could see one of the staffers being the one to get off here.
When I was researching for this podcast, I forgot to look this up before we started recording, but have any of you seen his viral video from last year? You have seen that? I got to look that up. Okay. Do you know about this? Yeah, Gabby, you want to describe what it is?
He is obviously COVID. Everybody's doing auditions through Zoom. He was insulted by the person he was auditioning for, thinking that they were on mute, but they were not.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the director's like, look at this guy's apartment. Like, you believe
their
this?
apartments are so tiny. Or he goes, yes, give me the job so I can have a bigger apartment. But you gotta watch it. It's so good.
All right, as soon as we finish, I gotta look that up.
I'm glad he has this role now. Then,
yeah,
good for him.
Yeah, he had said if he had gotten that role that he was auditioning for in that clip, then he wouldn't have wound up doing this. So it did work out, which I'm glad because he's been amazing in this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, well, Gia, a lot of power in your hands. You decide your last pick, and you will decide my last pick as well by your decision.
I don't want to go all in on Moss backers because I already have two of them. But and then if it ends up being Olivia, I'm gonna be so mad that I literally picked both. But we haven't seen Lonnie since the first episode. I was really hoping we would get to see more of her, and I'm really sad that it seems like she was just a story arc for the first episode with her pregnancy. And I get that it makes sense that she wouldn't immediately be coming back to work if she's even still employed there. But I was hoping we would see more Lonnie, and I don't even know if we're going to see her in this next episode, even if I loved her when she was there, but I don't even know if we're going to see her in this last episode. I don't know if anyone knows that for sure, but it would be intriguing how they would make that work if they had Lonnie come back in the last episode and have her be the one that dies. But I'm going to have to go with Nicole because I just feel like the probability of it being Lonnie is so low. for several reasons. I think most of her family is on that island. I really liked her in the first episode, but we haven't seen her since. So the likelihood of it being her is probably my lowest. She would probably be my lowest pick out of the other ones here of like the people it's least likely to be.
But
so I gotta go Nicole on this one.
Yeah. But it would be something because Lonnie pregnant first episode, Lonnie death last episode.
Yeah. And I don't want to see Lonnie.
That'd be messed up though.
It makes sense, but we've had so many women die of like pregnancy related complications, especially since she's a woman of color. And I really hope that's not the route that they're going down. I hope we do see more of her. If not right now, then in season 2. But I really hope it's not her. And I'm gonna show my little appreciation for my one episode warrior, but she killed it. I hope we do see her, and I hope she's not dead. But it would be interesting to have like the person that this death is surrounded by be the person that comes back. But Nicole, I don't think it's her, because I think for how prominent of a person she seems to be, I feel like there would be more buzz around it being her that died. So I don't believe it's Nicole. She's another frustratingly realistic character to me. I know a bunch of Nicoles, and I'm sure any of us know a bunch of Nicoles, and like successful women that have that are fine putting down other women to get to the position that they're in, which seems to be like her hypocritical overall character that she is. Connie Britton does an amazing job as her. This whole cast is fantastic, but I don't believe it's her for those reasons, but also she has some of the things that I've been looking for in why I think it's certain characters. She ended episode 5 on a high, like Mark did. She's intertwined with a lot of the plot lines that I think is going to contribute to someone's death. She's not a staff member, and I'm still of the sentiment that it's not going to be a staff member. Like Gabby said earlier, that they think that it's going to be Mossbacker, and I'm kind of in that same boat where I do think it's likely that it's going to be one of them. If it's not someone that it's not one of the characters directly connected to Shane, but we also haven't seen a lot of Nicole, and unless my theory is true that Shane's just upset about something completely different, I don't see why Nicole dying would be the thing that breaks him. So it's a lot, but that's my last pick. That's my little tangent. Last two.
I think you made the right pick, and I love that you have 75% of the Mossbachers on your team. I had Nicole and Lonnie and Kitty as my bottom 3, as the least likely to die. So I think we netted out, or we agreed on who is least likely for the most part. And Lonnie, like, while I would love to see her come back for the finale or for season 2. I think she might be the only character on here where if it winds up being her, like, I would be upset with that. Like, I'd be like, This is a bad choice. Like, this was not what you should have done in the finale. So I wind up with her as my last team member. But for pretty much everyone on my team, I kind of hope that I'm wrong. But it'll make it a little more fun to watch the finale. It would have been fun anyway, but now we've got some rooting interest. Let's see if my magic spreadsheet worked here. So what it should have done, as I was filling in the drafted by, it should have been filling in the draft board. Let's see if it worked. Yeah, it did. All right.
Yeah.
So here's our draft. We did it, guys.
Wow.
Oh my God, I love this.
Awesome. So does anybody want to hear that theory?
Yes.
Yes.
So I feel like Rachel is going to stay behind to report on what had happened at the resort. And that's why Shane is upset. because she wanted to go to Burning Man and do all that, but the story came to her. Do something with it.
God.
That's what I think. And that's why I didn't go with
brilliant.
Rachel when I
Yes.
think I should have.
I love that theory, and I hope it's true because that means I'm pretty much all banking in on the Moss backers at this point because she's my one non-Moss backer. But I love that theory, and I would love to see characters like Rachel and Belinda actually get some type of relief or some room to breathe at the end. Like even if they don't end on a high, they're not ending on a low either.
Yeah. There's some sort of weight being lifted off. Yeah, I would love to see that for both of them.
Well, we did it, guys. We finished our draft. I guess we've gone a little bit long. I could easily talk about this show for several more hours, but I appreciate you all being here. Don't want to keep you all night. I guess any other final thoughts or theories or things that you're looking out for in the finale?
I'm excited to see how it comes to an end. I really hope for not a setup for a second season, because I thought that the idea was they're going to be in a completely different resort, but I feel like we might see some of the same staff members. So maybe the death will figure into somebody going to a different place.
Yeah, I think if anything, the death will sort of be like the thing that sort of spurs off season 2 as well. Whatever happens in this next episode sort of haunts, members of the White Lotus wherever they go next.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think they've revealed whether we will come back to the same resort or whether we'll be somewhere else. I feel like it's more likely that it's a different resort and an all-new cast, although I love this cast and I would love to come back to the White Lotus if I'd be happy with either scenario and trust Mike White to do a good job either way. Yeah, I'm so excited to find out. Lost Gia, but I guess we'll see if Gia comes back in the next second or two. But I think we basically covered it. And yeah, again, thank you so much for joining me here to talk about the White Lotus. Like Gia said at the top, I've just been itching to talk about this show with other people who have watched it because not a lot of people have watched it yet. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you guys joined me. Oh, here's Gia. Let's bring her back. Hey.
There you go.
Oh, battery died?
I don't know what happened. My laptop said it ran out of battery, so I don't know if I have a charger issue or not. But I'm back. I'm on my phone now.
Oh, good. Thanks for coming back. I was just thanking all of you for joining me here. It's like you had said at the top, I've just been, so itching to talk about this show and debate theories. And it was so much fun doing it. This totally lived up to my expectations of what this draft and what this, theory brainstorming session was going to be. We'll see if, I don't know. Again, I trust Mike White. I think, if we can come up with all these theories and reasons for these characters to be the unlucky one to not survive the finale, I can only, I don't know. I can't imagine actually what Mike White could dream up. So I think we're in store for something good. I hope that we are. I'm definitely excited for it. And yeah, it'll just be a few short or a few long days until we get some conclusion to this story.
Yeah, I'm ready for my mind to be blown this next episode.
I'm
so
excited.
Yeah. I don't know. How do we end this? I guess we'll go one at a time. I'll just, we'll call each of you out and then take you off stage. And any closing thoughts or anything you want to plug or anything you want to say at all, and then we'll call it a podcast, I guess. And I guess why don't we go in reverse order of how we started? So, JD, how you feeling about your team? What are you thinking?
I feel surprisingly optimistic about my team. I think I kind of hit a broad spectrum of possibilities. So I am going to leave with satisfaction that if I didn't get it right, at least I was close. And yeah, like I said, I just can't wait to see how this all wraps up. Thank you so much for putting this together, KP. I had a lot of fun. I just got off a really stressful shift at work, so to come home to this, it's definitely been a highlight of my day, if not my week. So,
Well, thank you for being here. Same here. This has been the highlight of my week as well, and I love that Hutch pick. I think that Hutch pick and the anyone else pick, those are probably the two steals of this draft. So you really you came through with that 4 or 5 snake pick. Well, thanks again, and we'll have to catch up some more when we get some conclusions. So we'll chat about what we see in the finale. Thanks again for being here. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
Gia, any final thoughts? Where can we get more of you?
Sorry for my little technical glitch, but I am so glad that I finally got to talk about the White Lotus in depth with some people. I hope we get to do a reunion episode or something similar when we actually get a conclusion in the season finale. And I'm very excited to talk more about it. It's been great getting to dissect this show. I love satire, and I love these shows where we get ensemble casts that all are deeply flawed individuals. And I feel like we get that aplenty here. And I'm very excited to see how this ends. And I'm very excited to share thoughts with all of you later. But I have very, very heavy in the Mossbacker picks right now and Rachel. So while I think I still have a good chance, I'm not as optimistic after hearing some of you guys' really amazing theories about what you think is going to happen in the show. So I'm hoping I'm right, but also I'm hoping that we just get a really awesome finale. And I also have faith in Mike White, so I'm excited.
Well, thank you so much for the analysis. It's been great having you here, and loved your theories as well. And even though we kind of, I think, disagreed on how we think this show is going to wrap up, I like I respect your strategy, and I think it's a good one. And I kind of hope you're right, because I kind of hope I'm wrong with my picks.
I hope that I'm very excited to see which way it ends up going, because I do feel like we are on kind of opposite sides of the who we think it is and what our reasoning behind it is. So I'm excited for this.
It's been fun debating it. Well, thank you again, and we will see who winds up being right.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Gabby, close us out.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun. I haven't really watched The White Lotus with anybody or got to talk about it, so this has been great. I'm excited about my team because it's so out of left field for the most part, but I feel like the ending's going to be out of left field. I don't think we're going to see it coming at all, as much as we could sit here and predict. So I'm just excited to see how it ends, and I hope that we could chat about it after the season finale.
Yeah, well, you and me have one more thing we can fight about when we meet in person for the first time this weekend or tomorrow. Or today, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I can't wait to fight you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I like your team too. And we will see. We will see who winds up being right. Thanks again. Have a good rest of your night, and I'll see you pretty soon. Bye. All right. Well, let's turn on some music, I guess, and close this out. Let's get some like Hawaiian tropical music. Yeah, a little happier. Because I'm so happy and grateful to have had this discussion. Thank you again, JD and Gia and Gabby, for joining me. This has been so much fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it too. Anyone who watched this, hopefully we kind of filled the void that's out there. There doesn't seem to be really any The White Lotus podcasts yet. So here we are. We did this for you all. And we did it for ourselves too, because it was fun. So I hope I win this contest. I kind of hope I don't, but I don't know. All right. Anyway, thanks again. And yeah, I'll see you all in the Pineapple Suite. Adios. Or aloha. Aloha's hello and goodbye, right? I think so. All right. Aloha. Maybe.